Hello, everyone. Welcome to All Things College and Career, the podcast to turn to for all of your college and career planning needs. We are your hosts, Meg Gary
and Bobby Ryan,
owners of academic and career advising services located in Kennebunk, Maine.
We started this podcast to provide helpful information to listeners researching careers, colleges, or academic majors. Choosing your career or college is such a big decision, which is why our motto is learn before you leap. Before investing a lot of time or money, it's so important to do your research and to really explore your options.
Each podcast will offer interesting stories and valuable insights that we think you will find entertaining and informative.
Subscribe to our podcast and you'll have it ready to go on your playlist every Monday morning. So, learn before you leap each week with us.
Our guest today is Michael Morin, head wrestling coach at the University of Southern Maine. Michael had a successful high school and college wrestling career, making it all the way to nationals twice as a two-time All-American champion. Find out what motivated him to achieve these goals and learn how he transitioned from athlete to coach.
Do you wonder what it's like to coach a team at the college level? Mike talks about the varied and many responsibilities as a coach, from recruiter to fundraiser to advisor. Coaches wear many hats, and Mike gets into all of this and more.
That's for sure. If you are a parent, coach, or student athlete, you will want to hear what Michael has learned from all of his years of experience. His tips could help you negotiate the sometimes stressful and challenging road of school sports.
So whether you are hoping to coach wrestling on the college level or are currently a student athlete and wonder what your options are, you will learn a lot from this podcast. So let's get on to our conversation with Michael.
Hello, Michael Morin. Welcome to All Things College and Career. Thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're so glad to have you here today, Mike. Where are we talking to you from?
I'm actually at my home. I'm hanging out with my dog right now, so
nice.
just in my living room.
Yeah, are you in Portland?
No, I actually bought not too long ago down in the Biddeford Saco line. So I moved out of Portland and I'm down here now.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yep.
Are you loving it?
Yeah. So far, so good.
Good.
Yeah, I definitely I like it better than renting. So
yeah, well, there is that, right?
For sure, absolutely.
All right. So, hey, Mike, we're going to just dive right into this. Can you tell us 3 things you love about your job as a wrestling coach at University of Southern Maine?
Yeah. The first thing is obviously just staying involved in the sport of wrestling. I knew when my career was over, I wanted to stay involved in some aspect, and coaching kind of allowed me to do that. So just still being involved in the sport itself, because it's a sport that I obviously love and, I'm passionate about it. It's a passion of mine. So it's one of those things. I think people go their whole lives, though, maybe finding what their real passion is. So for me, at least at this point in my life, I always want to make sure it's a part of my life. So that allows me to do that.
Yeah.
I love working with our student athletes as well. So that's, I guess, the second thing is, working with our student athletes and all aspects of that too. Not just, obviously you have the wrestling aspect of it, but there's a whole lot more that goes into it as far as, hopefully helping these guys out, progress academically, and then go on to do whatever it is they want to do after college careers are over.
Kind of like a mentor, or kind of...
That's what I was just thinking, like a mentor. Yeah.
Somebody that kind of takes over where the parents left off, kind of thing.
Well, maybe not fully, right?
Yeah. No, but you know what it is for a lot of these guys, it's college is a big step, going from high school to college. And if nothing else, we're, myself and our coaching staff is just it's a support system for them. So they can come to us for a number of different things.
That's awesome.
Right. I have a senior in high school and he's going to play a college sport. And one of the big things for me as a parent is just after talking to the coach, he's like, hey, we look out for our players. We're a team. We try to make sure everybody stays up with their academics. And it's just that extra layer of someone else looking out for them. And it's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when we recruit, that's one of the big things we talk to the student athlete and their parents about is, hey, what we're there for, So yes, we are, I'm a wrestling coach and our coaches, that's what we do. But there's a lot more to it as far as we make sure our guys are doing well academically.
That's great.
Are being responsible, their conduct's good. And then I've had guys come to me on a number of different things. We're just someone that they can come to if they need anything.
Wow. Right. Like nothing to do with wrestling, just advice.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, like I know here at USM, we have a really good, my direct supervisor is our associate athletic director, and she's just another layer of support. So if I have guys coming to me for something and I'm unsure of, or maybe I need help with that, I can go to her and our administration, and that's another like layer of our support system here. So being involved in a sport, any sport, I think at a college level really helps with the transition from high school to college, and then hopefully ensures that the student's going to do well and have a really good experience.
That's so awesome. I would feel so much happier about being in a program like that where the coach actually cared, beyond just how you're doing on the mat kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yep.
So was there a third thing or?
Yeah. I think my third thing
no
that
pressure.
I like. The third thing that I like is, I guess the first is obviously the wrestling, everything wrestling. So competing, practicing, all that. And then the second is just working day in, day out with our student athletes. But then the third is just, seeing what these guys do after the fact, like after they graduate and what they're doing with their lives. Part of my job is like alumni engagement as well, like trying to keep our alumni involved with our program and support us. And so it allows me to kind of keep up.
That must be so fun, kind of rewarding to see them grow up almost.
Yeah. So a lot of the alumni for our program's only been around for just over 20 years. So we're actually a younger wrestling program when it comes to young. In the grand scheme of things and compared to a lot of other programs. But a lot of the alumni were actually, teammates of mine or guys who kind of came right before me. And now this is my fourth year as the head coach, but I've been with the program longer than that. I'm just starting to see more and more of the guys I coached graduate, which is cool to see and cool to kind of keep up with them and see what they're doing and where they're at and all that. So that's another part of it that I really like.
I can imagine. It must almost seem like a family for you if you've been around that long and having old teammates and then kids you've coached.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was thinking about it the other day, and it's kind of crazy, but as a student athlete and coach, I've now been with USM as an athlete and coach for, I think it was 13 years. So it's one of those things that
And if the program's only 20 years old, like...
Yeah. So when I first got there, it was really kind of a newer program. And it's one of those things that I've seen it grow and been a part of that growth as an athlete and coach. But yeah, it definitely is almost like you have a really good bond with, former teammates and, student athletes and things like that. Like I'm flying out tomorrow morning to Indianapolis to attend a wedding of one of our former wrestlers. So,
it's just kind of proof right there of your closeness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, all my good friends are all, for the most part, not all, but a good number of them are all guys that are involved with the sport, and it's one of those things that like you form a bond with teammates and your wrestlers and things like that. That's really unique. So it's a cool part of the job, I guess.
Right. Definitely. Yep. I love that. So Mike, can you tell us where it all began for you? Like, how did you begin wrestling and what got you involved in it? And
how old were you?
So with wrestling, I got involved pretty young. I think I was in second grade. And I guess when you're that young, my parents were just throwing me into all kinds of different sports. But my dad wrestled in high school. So I think that's probably why they decided wrestling, as one of the sports for me to try out. I definitely... When I was younger, like I said, I played football and baseball and I wrestled. I did a bunch of other things too, but wrestling at that time really wasn't one of my favorite sports.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I liked it, but it was one of those things that I don't know what it was at the time, but
maybe the other sports you could run around more.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. Like young boys, it's really hard to like sit and stay focused. I mean, not that wrestling's sitting, but it's in one area. You're not like, so maybe that's just the energy thing.
Football was definitely my favorite sport for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I actually stopped. So I started in second grade and I stopped. And I think I did it for about 4 years and then I stopped and I started playing basketball. And I played basketball, and the biggest thing for me was playing basketball. Like I said, I liked wrestling, but it wasn't my favorite sport at the time. And
but that's like a direct conflict, right? Basketball and wrestling, same time of year.
Exactly, they were same season. So what I was doing is I was kind of playing both. And I remember I went to a tournament and I didn't do well in it. At the time, I was kind of doing both. And, I was kind of like upset on myself. My dad's like, hey, well, you got to pick one or the other then. If you want the success you want to have, you should pick one or the other at this point. And at the time, all my friends were playing basketball. So I was like, and I did like basketball too. So I was like, I'm gonna do basketball. So I did that for 3 years. I did that like all through junior high. Looking back, it was probably the best thing I could have done, because I think if I had continued on and just wrestling, I don't know if I would have continued. Like, I look back, and especially now that I look at young wrestlers and parents, and how, sometimes parents get crazy when their kids are so young in whatever sport it is. So at the time, I look back and I think it might have been the best thing for me just to take some time away from the sport.
I love that.
To high school.
Yeah. That was a question I actually had for you, but dig into it a little later. But what you recommend to parents that way, like, should they specialize at a young age, or should they just be kids? And
absolutely. I have a real strong opinion on that. And, so looking back, I think it was the best thing for me just to play basketball and be with my friends and do that. And then when I got to high school, I kind of always told myself that I did want to get back into the sport of wrestling. And being, I think I was like 5 feet tall going into my freshman year of high school. Basketball probably wasn't going to be for me in high school. So I just decided that in high school, I was going to go back to wrestling. So I started my freshman year in high school, started back again wrestling. That's when I really, really, really started loving the sport. I don't know what it was. That's when I really started loving it. Yeah, it just clicked. And, I was still playing football. And then my freshman year, I came into the season about halfway through for wrestling because I broke my leg playing football. So I missed a lot of my first year wrestling. And I think it's kind of weird, but I think breaking my leg playing football kind of made me always have a bad taste in my mouth for football. So maybe that's why I started loving wrestling. Who knows? But
yeah, breaking your leg could give you a bad taste. And my question is too, is that you bring up football going into wrestling. So I know a lot of kids that go from football to wrestling and drop an amazing amount of weight in a short period of time. For wrestling season. I'm just curious what your viewpoint is on that from a health standpoint.
Yeah, I think now that I'm coaching, my view is a lot different. When I was an athlete, I definitely thought cutting weight was, you almost needed to do it.
Right.
But now, we always say a little saying we have on our team is lighter's not always better. So even at the college level, I don't make my guys cut down to a weight class they don't want. I actually say I allow them to choose whatever weight class they want to wrestle.
That's awesome.
It's a little different at the college level, I guess. But at the high school level, I would just encourage guys, if they're interested in coming out, come out and you don't have to cut weight, especially if you're a football player and you're serious about football. Wrestling is probably the best sport for you to get better at football. It's gonna teach you how to
body awareness and
it's gonna teach you body awareness. You're gonna have an understanding of how to move people, how to manipulate their body versus yours.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Using their weight against them or their momentum against them, things like that.
A lot of the best football players were also former high school wrestlers.
Really?
And it's one of those things that a lot of guys, they think maybe if they're a football player, they just need to lift or whatever the case. But I think wrestling is such an asset to them should they go that route.
Well, that's a good tip out there for people that really love football.
Absolutely.
Maybe they should.
Give wrestling a shot in the
wrestling is great. It teaches you to compete. You're competing one-on-one every time you step on the mat. Once you do that and you just learn what you're actually going to learn from wrestling, and then just all the other things you can learn from it, it's going to help you in football, no doubt about it. But
I think that's so true about the competing. Just that it takes so much confidence to go out in front of a crowd and be prepared to fail. And that's such a big life lesson too, that knowing you can handle that. I mean, that takes a lot of courage.
It does, especially when they put that spotlight on two wrestlers on the mat. The whole room's dark. You got the one spotlight. It's oh my God, no pressure. Don't worry about it.
Yep. It's so true. And then I just don't think, especially if you're a younger wrestler just getting in, you don't need to cut weight. I don't think it's necessary. So that would be my take on it. If you get a little deeper into the sport and take it a little more serious, if you want to cut some weight and you want to do it the right way and do it healthy, that's one thing. But there's too much emphasis a lot of times on cutting weight. And actually, I lived my career in college. My freshman year, I cut a ton of weight and the results weren't where I wanted them. And then I moved up 2 weight classes and I had the best 3 years of my career. So
that's interesting.
That was proof. And I think me living that maybe changed my view on that situation a little bit.
Because I wonder if you can be your full capacity if you're actually
starving.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
I don't know how you could be stronger or have that even thinking faster if you're deprived for food. You probably can't even.
No, you can. If you're doing it the right way, and really eating clean and, getting those workouts and doing it the right way, you absolutely can lose weight the right way and still compete at a high level.
Sure.
But the guys who are just, depriving themselves and just completely depleting their bodies and then expecting to go and compete and still have those same results, and it's just not going to happen. It's just,
not to mention how just unhealthy it is for your body to do that to your body.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyways, you wrestled all through high school, and can you tell us about what that was like?
Yeah. I, like I said, high school is kind of where I fell in love with the sport. I wrestled in New Hampshire at a high school called St. Thomas Aquinas. It was a smaller high school. And, like I said, my freshman year, I kind of came in late to the season, but finished the season. And then after that, I kind of just wanted to continue wrestling. So I wrestled a little bit in that off season. I still, I think I played lacrosse that year too. I was playing lacrosse and I played lacrosse that year.
You really did try everything.
Yeah. And then by sophomore year, I continued to play football throughout my high school career. But by my sophomore year, I stopped playing lacrosse and I started wrestling in the spring and in the summers. So I was like wrestling consistently a good 3 seasons out of the year. And then during football season, I would 2 nights a week, I'd after football practice, I'd go down to the wrestling club I used to go to and get a couple wrestling practices in the fall. So I was doing it pretty much year round at that point.
What was that wrestling club that you used to go to?
I used to go to it's called Smitty's Wrestling Barn. It's down in Danville, New Hampshire. Well, it was in Danville, New Hampshire. They've since moved, and it's one of the top clubs in New England now. It even was then, but now it's really blown up, and they're doing some pretty cool things. When I was there years ago, it was a little smaller. Now there's kids that come from all over.
And it's still called that, Smitty's?
Yep. And they they run basically year round. So like any sport these days, you can do it year round if you want.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yep.
I think that's, for me, I wanted to do it. I was so fired up about it, and I just wanted to get better and better. Like, I wanted to wrestle year round. It's not for everybody. I think some guys, might need time off. So that's something that it's just more on the individual. But for me in high school, I just wanted to keep doing it. I was seeing myself get better, then
but at that point you were probably a sophomore and you were playing lacrosse and football. So you weren't like a freshman. And then by then, you were pretty far along. You weren't like an 8th grader specializing in one sport.
Yeah.
You were probably a junior by the time you completely
By the time I started doing it, it was like the end of my sophomore year is when I started doing it pretty much year round. And I still did play football, so I still had that aspect of it.
So you still had a second sport.
Yeah, I think for little kids, I think I'd encourage playing multiple sports when you're younger. I think that's so important. I think if you specialize too young in any sport, one, there's the burnout factor. And you see it all the time in wrestling. At least I don't know about other sports, but you see little kids that are wrestling maybe 9 months out of the year, and they don't even make it till junior high, and they've already quit the sport because they're just burnt out by it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think you learn a lot from other sports as well.
Right. Maybe like you taking that little break to play basketball with your friends made you miss it a little too. Like you had that love for it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, my freshman year is when I really fell in love with the sport, and however many years later, still love it. So like I said, it's probably maybe the best thing for me at that time that I took that little break.
Yeah. So you were saying that one was the burnout reason not to specialize, but what were you going to say the other?
I think you can learn a lot from other sports too when you're younger, like in the youth levels. Like there's all kinds of other really good sports that you can do. And really it allows the kid to choose what they want to be doing, right? Like if you're a young kid and you're doing whatever sport year round, I think it's good for kids to try things out, try other sports, be part of other teams. I think if guys who do want to compete and train like on a year round, or like at least more than just for that whatever season it is, I think it's something that maybe is better for a little bit older athletes, maybe when they get into high school or so. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's just my opinion on it. And I guess for me, I'm thinking of like the longevity of the athlete. Like, how long do you want to be competing in it? If you want to be competing from when you're 5 to in your 20s, you're not going to be doing it year round for that many years. It's good when you're young. It's good to just try other sports and have fun with it and learn and keep it light. I think the thing is with these young kids too is people put too much pressure on them from parents or like the youth parents and youth coaches when it's like really nobody cares when you're seriously, like if you're 6 years old and you win the Pee Wee state tournament, hey, if you do that, great. But if you're putting a ton of pressure on a young kid like that to do that, you're just going to burn them out. And it's at that level, it's just about learning and growing. And
I think that's such great advice. And like you said, unless you've tried a bunch of things, how do you really even know what you've liked if you've just been in the same old thing? Yeah. So, and I think from a coach's perspective, you must feel like if people really tried it out, taking a break, that they're there because they love it. Like it's
right. They came back to it. Yeah. So I know you had some success in high school, Mike. We'd like to hear about.
Tell us all about it.
Yeah. High school, I was a 4-time state placer, and I won the state title my junior and senior year. And then how it works in like the New England states is basically every state for the New England states will have their state tournament, and you have to qualify for like the New England championship. So like wrestling and track and field and some of the individual sports have the New England championships. So I qualified for the New Englands a couple of years, and I placed my junior and senior year top 6 in New England.
Wow.
And that was basically my high school career.
That's pretty amazing.
I just remember, it was a solid career. I remember really still wanting way more though. I remember being like really
you just were not satisfied. And maybe going to some of those bigger meets like New England's probably opened your eyes.
Yeah, I wanted to win a New England title. That was my thing in high school. And for me, that was the guys who were winning New England titles. That was pretty good, and I didn't do that. So for me, I was just still really
hungry almost.
Yeah, really hungry. Still really wanted to wrestle, and I knew I wanted to wrestle in college. And
so coming out of high school, you must have had coaches that were interested in you.
Yeah, most like the Division III schools in the area, in the New England area. I would talk to those coaches, and I had a good high school career, but I wasn't. I mean, there's way better careers out there than what I had in high school. We have probably 10 guys on our team right now at USM that had better high school careers than I had.
Really?
So I knew I could just do better, I guess. So I was recruited by a lot of the Division III schools and looked at a few of them. And ultimately, that's kind of how I chose USM. Is I actually first met the coach at the time at USM, Coach Pistone, at a camp.
Really?
And it was like I think it was the summer between my sophomore and junior year. I met him. I remember him just coming in. He had a ton of energy, and he came into the camp and he ran a session, and he made everybody like fired up. You know what I mean? Like, after this guy was done, you're just like, man, that guy, like I'd want to wrestle for that guy someday.
Right.
And then like the next year, he came down to my club, the wrestling club I was going to, and did a clinic. And I remember just being like, yeah, this guy's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, everybody was really motivated, and he really did a good job getting you excited to wrestle that day. So USM was one of the schools I looked at, and Coach Pistone, he recruited me there as well. And ultimately, that's where I chose to go. And a big part of it.
Was it a good decision for you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still at USM, so I guess it was a good decision.
That was kind of a rhetorical question, I guess.
Yeah, no, it was a good decision for me, I think. So Coach Pistone came in, and USM, like we talked about earlier, it's a very young program, and they had really very little success as a program at that time. They hadn't had any All-Americans in the program. Their team results weren't the best, but I saw the year that he was recruiting me was, my senior year. I was following their success, and they were just like, you saw the growth that they were having, and they were
improving a little bit every year.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, like, hey, under this guy, they're going to just keep getting better and better. And a big part of why I went to USM was actually to wrestle for him. I met the coaches, and I liked the coaches, and I liked the team. I can definitely say this now. Now I know the importance of going to college and all that, but at the time I was going to college to wrestle. School was just like was like an afterthought. You know what I mean? Right. So
you were shopping for wrestling programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And USM at the time, it was not the best wrestling program that I was getting recruited by. I just liked what was going on there. And I just liked what was going on with the program. Like, I liked the coach. I kind of liked the idea of going into a program and trying to make the program better.
All right.
I didn't, for whatever reason,
challenge.
I like that.
And it was just maybe something instinctual inside you that said, this is the right fit. It just felt right.
Sure. My sister was actually at USM at the time too, which people ask if that had any effect. It really had no effect at all, I don't think, on me going there. But ultimately, that's where I chose. It came down to a few different schools, and there was a couple other schools that I was really considering at the time. But when I chose USM, it was cool because then I saw the recruiting class that was coming in with me, and we had probably one of the best recruiting classes, definitely, that USM had seen at the time. And even now, present day, it was still probably one of the better recruiting classes that had ever come into USM. And
wow,
we had some really, really good guys come in, and So I had some really good teammates
Yep.
throughout my years. And yeah, it was cool.
Probably says a lot for the coach. Sounds like he was a good motivator and was able to recruit those guys, including you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you just tell for anybody out there listening that might be interested in going to USM, can you just tell us a few little things about the school?
Yeah, absolutely. The University of Southern Maine, we're located, obviously, southern part of the state, given the name, but we're an NCAA Division III school located in the greater Portland area. So what's kind of unique about our school is we do have a split campus. So we have a campus in Gorham, Maine, which is more of a smaller town feel, and then about 8 miles away in Portland, we have another campus, and that's right in the heart of Portland. So it's more of a city feel. So a lot of times that can kind of be a big question mark for recruits and incoming guys. But once they kind of get on campus and get used to it, a lot of them like it a lot just because each campus has its own feel. You have a small town feel or a small town campus, and then Portland being more of a city feel. And you have everything that's going on in Portland right now. With Portland, Maine right now is probably one of the hot spots in the entire country.
It is a hot spot. Between restaurants and
absolutely.
It's great. A lot of young people moving to Portland. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's blowing up for sure. And when we recruit, student athletes, we definitely show them Portland and what there is to offer. And then at the same time, it's funny. It's like a lot of the guys we recruit are kind of intimidated by Portland because it's the city feel and all that. So they really like the Gorham campus, which is quieter. Sebago Lake is 5 minutes away. You have some other things going there. So
that's perfect. You have the best of both worlds.
That's a great
that's exactly what I say.
Thing.
At least, so it's definitely unique in that sense. And then we have a wide range of majors and minors. We have over 50 majors and minors. We have 22 varsity athletic teams on campus. So it's a pretty cool spot. Like I said, I've been there 13 years now. So I've enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that was really helpful too for anybody listening. So, hey, I just want to talk just a little bit about your college career as a wrestler. So you're a 2-time Division III All-American, 2009, 2010, and a 3-time NCAA Division III New England champion at the 165-pound weight, I think. 3 years in a row. So
3 years in a row.
That's 3 years in a row.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like, or maybe some of the matches, or just what was it like to be that successful in a college wrestling program?
Yeah, for me, it was just going back to my high school career. When it ended, I just knew I had more to give. You know what I mean? Like, I think part of that was just I was still so in love with the sport. I was really passionate about just getting better. And I knew going to USM, I was going to have some good coaches and good practice partners. In my freshman year, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I came in, I started out having a pretty good season. And that's where, like, when we talk about the weight cutting kind of got to me my freshman year, where I was cutting a lot of weight. I was actually wrestling at 149 pounds.
Wow.
I probably walked around at like 180 in the off season. And then, but the big thing was
that's a pretty big drop.
Yeah. I was like yo-yoing up and down. Like I'd weigh in and then I'd balloon up, and then I'd weigh in the next week and balloon up. And it just really was taking its toll on me. So ultimately that led to me getting injured, and I missed a lot of my freshman year. I missed a good part of the second semester. My freshman year, it wasn't the best year. I ended up ultimately coming back at the very end of the year. I got healthy. At the time, I really couldn't make 149 anymore. And my coaches actually even told me, they're like, hey, we want you to just move up, because it wasn't good for my health. And I wasn't competing at nearly the level I could compete at that weight class. So that's kind of why I say, like, lighter is not always better now.
Right. Because you lived that.
Yeah, I lived that. So I went in my freshman year to our conference tournament, which was our New England tournament at the time. And I went in 2 weight classes higher at 165 pounds. And I lost. I had an okay tournament. I didn't really have any expectations for myself there, because I had been wrestling at 149 the whole year.
Right.
165 is a pretty big jump.
That's a big jump.
Yeah. And I was coming off being injured for about like 6 to 7 weeks. So I just wrestled the tournament. I didn't place as a freshman. I remember being super bummed out, and it was like I lost in the match to place. And I remember that being the first tournament I hadn't placed in like a long, long time. Wow. I don't think I could remember.
You forgot what it was like.
Yeah.
So I was really bummed out, but at the same time, it like kind of gave me a lot of motivation as to just like, all right, you can kind of like think about it and feel bad for yourself, or just get back to work. So I knew going into my sophomore year, I was going to stay at 165 pounds. I knew I wasn't going to cut down anymore. So I was going to stay at 165, which I was still cutting some weight to make that, but it was way more manageable, and I could do it, feeling good and healthy. So my focus in the off season was just to lift and get strong. And when I came in my sophomore year, it was just like, that's where it really started for me. Like, I think my like college career, as far as having the success.
That's where it started clicking.
Yeah. I started winning tournaments. I think we had 4 tournaments to start the year, and I think I won 3 out of the 4, which was good. I didn't win any of the year before. And then,
yeah, that's a big jump up. And especially being 2 weight classes up, that's crazy.
I was just wrestling better. I was feeling better. I used to go into practices just to lose weight. Like my mentality was just like, all right, I got to just lose weight. Whereas now I could actually focus on like getting better at wrestling, which is great because I didn't have to worry about the weight. My sophomore year, the New England tournament, I entered the New England tournament. I think I was the number 3 seed going into that tournament. I made the finals. And how it worked back then is you used to have to win the conference tournament to qualify for the national tournament.
Really?
Now it's a little different where in Division III, they switched to regions around the country. And now you can place top 3 and get to nationals. But at the time, you had to win it.
So it was a lot tougher back in your day then.
Yeah. So the way it is right now is like our region it's the same New England tournament, and then we added in New York University. Now I definitely like it a lot better in the sense that we only added 1 other team in, and we got 2 more placers go to nationals.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I made it to the finals, and I remember I won in overtime in the finals against this guy named Jake Tyler, who at the time was he was a senior for Springfield College. Springfield College is always a really, really strong program.
Yes.
He was always a guy who was like in the finals like every year. He was really good. And I beat him in overtime.
The guy to beat. Yeah, that must have been a great match.
It was cool. And the thing is, so you had to, back then where they only sent 1 guy, you had what's called a true second. So he lost. He wrestled the guy who took 3rd. And the winner of that match would get to wrestle me again to see who would go to nationals.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, so it was crazy. It was a little different. So he ended up beating the guy who took 3rd.
So you had to wrestle him again? Oh my God.
But because I had already beaten him once, he had to beat me twice. Okay.
Oh my God.
And the winner would go to nationals. So our second match, he beat me.
Oh no.
And,
I was like, crap, I got to wrestle this guy again. So
oh my goodness.
This is a nightmare.
That must have been really exciting though for the viewers.
Yeah, it was for sure.
Yeah, right.
Looking back, it was cool for me, but like when I was living it, it really wasn't cool.
Oh, that must have been so stressful. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were hosting the New England tournament that year. USM was hosting.
Oh my.
And same deal, how you talked, Bobby, earlier about how like we had the mat light, the one mat light. And like we had like our,
I'm telling you,
it was like, I feel like it was well attended.
Yeah.
So anyway, we wrestled again a 3rd time, and I ended up winning again in overtime.
I'm just thinking the same thing.
Your mother must have.
Mom had she had face in her hands.
Yeah,
Can't watch. And you must have gotten to know that guy pretty well by then.
Exactly. So ultimately, I mean,
you beat him in overtime.
It was both my wins with him were overtime, and
those were not
me for nationals.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So that was your first time going as a sophomore.
Yep. For me, it was such a learning experience. Just beating him at the time though, like for me, like validated, like, all right, I can compete with these guys. And I went out to the national tournament that year and I went 0-2. I didn't do very well.
Yeah.
And I came back and I was like, all right, well, I was going into my junior year.
Yeah, but still, just to get to nationals is just to be there is an accomplishment.
Yeah, no doubt. It's guys who are qualifying for nationals
it's a big deal. For sure. It's a big deal. Yeah.
I just saw progress every year. My junior year, same deal. At that point, I was really just confident in my wrestling. Having been to the NCAA tournament and seeing that, and then I don't think I lost in New England the rest of my career.
Wow, that's incredible, Mike.
Yeah. So my junior year, I think I was undefeated going into the NCAA national tournament. So I won my second New England title my junior year.
Wow.
And I went to nationals as the number 6 seed.
Wow.
And had just for me that year was like, I wanted to be an All-American. You want to be an All-American, you need to place top 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to place top 8, and I was the number 6 seed. So I was essentially,
you're like, I can do this.
Yeah, I was seeded to be an All-American, and I wrestled the tournament. I ended up losing in the quarterfinals and battled back and won a few matches, and I ended up ultimately making it to the 3rd place match, and I lost. I actually wrestled the returning national champ in the 3rd place match that year, and I lost to him.
Wow.
But I took 4th in the country as a junior, and
that is amazing.
For me, it was really exciting at the time. I was the program's first All-American. So part of why I wanted to come to USM was to help establish the program, and being the program's first NCAA All-American was pretty cool for me at the time. And
for sure.
And then
you, the team, the school, everyone.
Yeah, no doubt. It's big. And
it was a proud moment. Yep.
For everyone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then my senior year, I finally started thinking, hey, I want to win a national title. Like, I never really, people say that. People say
before
they want
it's
that.
not bad, but shoot.
Yeah. And I was ranked number 1 in the country going into the year. And
you were your senior year?
Yep.
Oh
and
my gosh, that's so cool.
I was ranked number 1 in the country for up through December. I remember that year my coach scheduled us to go out to Las Vegas and wrestle some teams out there, some really good teams that at the time they had the number 2 and number 3 ranked guys in the country. So I was ranked number 1. We went out to Vegas and we wrestled for me individually. I got to wrestle the guys ranked number 2 and number 3, and I lost to both of them.
Oh, wow.
And,
no.
So
God.
That must have been.
That's a little defeating. I got to work
sure.
harder. I got to work harder.
Yeah. One of them was a transfer from the University of Iowa, which Division I program, and Iowa's a powerhouse, and he transferred into a Division III team, and he ended up beating me. And the other was a 2-time
Wait a
junior
minute,
college.
was that a strategic move so he could get a national title, or because he actually needed to go to that school for some reason?
Well, you see it a lot. You see a lot of guys will start out at Division I schools and then will transfer to another school, whether it's for academics or whatever the situation is. But it's really not that uncommon. You see it year in, year out. Guys at different levels transfer in. And then the other kid was another guy that was new to Division III. He was a 2-time junior college national champ, and he transferred to another school, Division III school. So I wrestled both those guys, and they both beat me.
Wow!
And,
you must have been so nervous after that.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. Like, it was good that it happened when it did. And I don't know, it kind of just was motivating at the time. So I wrestled the rest of the year. And I think I went into the national tournament that year as the number 4 seed. And I still had the expectation. I wanted to be a national champ. And when I lost in the quarterfinals that year to an unseeded wrestler.
Ooh, that's tough.
So I lost in the quarterfinals, and I was pretty upset. And then I ended up coming back and wrestling back, and I took 5th place that year. But the kid who beat me ended up winning a national title, the unseeded guy.
The unseeded guy. He was no joke, whoever he was.
No, exactly. He ended up...
God, a Cinderella story.
Yeah, I know.
He came in unseeded. I lost him in the quarters, and he ended up winning the semis and the finals. And then he actually was named the outstanding wrestler of the tournament as well.
Wow.
At that point, I knew it was important for me to finish the tournament, at least as strong as I could, and place. So I placed 5th and was an All-American again. But whereas the year before as a junior, I was pretty excited about placing 4th in the country, and I wasn't so excited about placing 5th my senior year. I was kind of upset about it because I just wanted to do more. So for me, I guess that's also, I think, got me into coaching is just, I never accomplished my goals as an athlete. So for me, it's my goal now is I want to be known as a better coach than I was athlete, because I didn't accomplish my goals as an athlete. So
I love that, Mike. And it looks like you're well on your way to doing just that.
Yeah. So, wow, that was a really interesting college career you had, Mike. And you decided to take position as assistant coach wrestling. So how did that all come about? How'd you land that job?
Yeah. So my college coach, maybe halfway through my senior year, just kind of approached me and was like, hey, would I be interested in just staying on and helping out at some capacity? For me, it was without a question, I wanted to stay involved with wrestling at some level. And so the year after I graduated, I stayed on as a volunteer assistant at USM. At the time, actually, that year, I was an assistant high school coach at Bonnie Eagle High School, and I was an assistant college coach at USM. And it worked out, at practice times didn't clash. I was able to pretty much do both. Yeah, we practiced 2 to 4 at Bonnie, or maybe it was 3 to 5 and 6 to 8 at USM at the time. So it was
you were busy then.
yeah, definitely busy, but it was cool to stay involved, and it just kind of was the start of me coaching.
What do you think the USM coach saw in you that made him want you to help him coach the team?
Over my 4 years at USM, I had a really good relationship with both my coaches, Coach Pistone and Coach Santiago. So I'd already had a really good relationship with them. On top of that, I did have a successful career, which I don't think you necessarily need to have a successful career as an athlete to be a good coach, but I also don't think it hurts.
Sure.
So my role, my first few years for sure, my role was really, I would run the room a lot of the time. So I'd actually put the guys through the workouts, through the practices. I still am, not as much, but back then I was doing everything with the guys. So I was very hands-on. I was drilling with them. I was wrestling live with them. And that was kind of my role the first few years for the most part. That was a lot of what I did. And for him, I think he liked that because...
Yeah, that must be nice for a head coach to have somebody do that. That's in the trenches.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. He used to be the one who would run the room every day. And he still did for sure when I was coaching with him, but it allowed him to maybe do some other things and focus in areas other than maybe just that practice that day or things like that. So I think the big part is I had a really good relationship with both coaches. So even if you're a good wrestler, if you don't have a good relationship with your coach or people in general, you're probably not going to get asked for certain opportunities.
They're not going to invite somebody to hang around that they don't want to be around.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But they must have seen in you that you were good at helping other wrestlers out. You were probably a good teammate.
Definitely.
So they probably saw that in you, I'm sure.
I think so. I think that was probably what played into it. I was a team captain, I think my junior and senior year. So I think that having a kind of a leadership
role. Showed your leadership role.
Helped out.
Yep.
And I see you got the NEWA Assistant Coach of the Year award in 2014 and 15. What was that like?
Yeah. So our conference is the New England Wrestling Association. It includes all the NCAA Division III schools in New England. That year, and actually looking back, that happened to be my last year as an assistant. The next year I took over as a head coach. That year we had a pretty good season. I think we had the most dual meet wins in school history. I think we had 4 or 5 region placers as a team, and then had a couple guys qualify for the NCAA national tournament. So we had a pretty solid year as a team that year, and Coach Pistone put me up for that award, and I ended up getting it. That was cool. That was a really good way to, I didn't know it at the time, but that was my last year as an assistant, and then I took over as a head coach the year after. It's always nice to win stuff like that where it's just some recognition for what you're doing. It's a nice
recognition. Yeah. And it also gave you that confidence to know that you're a good coach. That's just a good confidence builder for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That was your last year assistant, and the following season you became a head coach. What happened there? Did Coach Pistone retire?
So Coach Pistone, he ended up stepping down. It was kind of crazy how it all happened. I mean, I don't think it was something that was really planned. It just midway through maybe like June, I think he knew he was kind of getting towards the end of his coaching career, and maybe at least at Southern Maine and maybe at the NCAA level. He saw that Florida Gulf Coast, they had a club program down there, and he liked Florida. He was just ready to be in a warmer climate, and club wrestling is a little bit more laid back than NCAA in the sense that it's not a really varsity status, and it's just, I think that was going to be more his speed. So he decided to kind of just head down there and do that. I think
a change.
He was a coach for, I think it was like 12 or 13 years at USM. So he's just been doing it for a while. And now he's still down in Florida, but he doesn't coach anymore. He has a boat and he does like tours in the St. Petersburg area, like for tourists and stuff. And he's really, really successful with it. Crazy busy. He kind of has changed gears altogether. And
a whole second career there.
Yeah, exactly. And but it's pretty cool. And anyway, like with him stepping down, it opened up that position. And at the time, I can tell you, I didn't want to, or I didn't expect to be a head coach at that time. I was still fairly young, and I think I was like 27 at the time. And for me, I think it was just, I had some doubt in my mind that I'd be able to do it and do a good job with it.
It's a big step. Yeah, big
absolutely.
Shoes to fill. You had a lot of respect for this guy. And
and I think the big thing, I wasn't naive to the fact that there's a lot of work that goes into it that I wasn't really doing as an assistant. So I knew that.
Sure.
Like my role as an assistant, I definitely was doing some things, and I was a part of the program and helping out, but I knew there was a lot of other things that I wasn't doing that he was doing that just didn't know, how I'd handle it. And ultimately though, it came down to, hey, do I want to stay involved in the sport? Do I want to do this? Do I want to stay at USM? And I was like, yep. So I was like, let's just do it. So I applied. Actually, at first they named me the interim coach. So for 2 years, I was the interim head coach.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Is that like a trial run? Is that what that means?
Basically, like, they just handed me the position where, in the sense that, like, they didn't put it up for
No interview.
They didn't do a search or anything like that. But the university policy is you actually do have to. So for 2 years, I was the interim coach. So, I mean, I was still the head coach. But then after those 2 years, they actually said, hey, we have to put it up for search. And I think they knew ultimately they wanted me to be the coach. And it was very short-lived. They posted it on the university site, I think, for like the minimum amount of days that they, like, per policy they had to. And I don't even know, I really don't know who applied or anything like that. But I actually ultimately had to interview for it 2 years later, which is kind of funny because I was already, I'd already been the coach.
I'd already been doing it for 2 years.
Yeah,
right.
and it was funny because we just came off a really good season. They were kind of joking with it in the sense that, like, hey, I think
this is a formality.
Exactly. So then, I got the job formally, and
that must have felt good though to have the interim behind you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
because the reason they did the interim as well, it was so late in the season. So in order to open up like a national search and do all that, it takes some time. And it was like mid-June when Coach Pistone stepped set down. So we really didn't have all that much time until the students would be back on campus. It was just one of those things. They're like, hey, they approached myself and Coach Santiago, who was one of my coaches. Are you guys going to stick around? And we were like, yeah, we are. So we kind of hit the ground running.
They were kind of lucky to have you with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It was interesting, but it all worked out.
Definitely. Right. So do you have any big changes you'd made taking over or anything? What are you most proud of since you've taken over the program?
Yeah, the program's continued to grow and get better and develop the last several years. The first year as a head coach was a huge learning experience. It was literally just like learning as I go. I did not know what I was doing. I was just,
I'm sure.
And I mean, for sure, wrestling's a part, but there was just so many other things involved that I wasn't used to doing.
Can you talk about those things a little bit, Mike? Because if we're thinking about our listeners who are thinking about maybe becoming a head coach, what do I have to do? What are these things he's talking about?
Yeah, I guess when I first got into coaching, I just wanted to be involved in the sport. I just wanted to continue to wrestle and be a part of wrestling. Now, as a head coach, it's almost like running your own business in the sense that, like, yes, wrestling is still the forefront. It's what we do. It's a wrestling program, but there's a lot more aspects to it. So a big part of my job is recruiting student athletes, and then not just recruiting them, but retaining them. So making sure they're doing well academically, making sure they're progressing towards their degree. Those two things alone, there's a lot of time in it. Recruiting alone is a huge undertaking. It's basically sales. You're trying to showcase your program and your school and try to get really good student athletes to check you out and ultimately to decide to go there. But at the same time, it's really competitive. There's a lot of other schools after these same kids.
The same group of kids, yeah.
Exactly. So it's really about being active with it, staying on top of it. And for that, it's just really putting the time in. Like, you got to put the time in and do it.
Right. Do you go visit them at their meets, go to college fairs? How do you approach these athletes?
Yeah, there's so many different ways. So yeah, I'll absolutely go to tournaments and matches and to scout and to watch, whether it be me just like looking for new talent or like, hey, maybe I've been recruiting or talking to a kid for a while. I don't want to go watch him wrestle, and just to kind of show my face and be there and all that. There's college fairs that we'll attend, whether it's sometimes they're at like big tournaments or, different camps or things like that. That will be like college fairs for the wrestlers at these events that I'll attend.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's as simple as me getting an email from a coach or even from the wrestler saying, hey, coach, I'm interested in your program. And then that's how that will start. Or I'll look at results and I really like a few kids and I'll reach out to their coach and say, hey, tell me about so-and-so. What's their deal? Are they looking to go to school? Are they looking to wrestle at the next level and kind of start it from there? So there's a lot of different ways in which you could kind of go about it. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing is just being active, because you're going to get a lot more no's than you get yeses. I get a lot more kids that tell me, hey, thanks, coach. Whether they go through a whole process of coming on visits, seeing the school, applying all that, or even if it's just over the phone, hey, thanks a lot, coach, but I'm just not interested, So I get a lot more no's than I get yeses, but it's just being active, just making sure we're putting the time into that aspect, because ultimately recruiting is what's going to get you a good program.
Yeah. What are you looking for in your student recruits? Like, what's most important to you?
Number one is they got to be like good people, like good kids.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all want good wrestlers, right? But you don't need to be a world beater coming out of high school for me to want you or for me to recruit you. I look back at myself. I didn't have I had a good career in high school, but there's a lot of kids who have like good careers, but they're still really passionate about the sport and still really want to get better. Those are the kids who are really still fired up about it, that are going to go on and do well at the next level. Because I really believe in what we have going on. Like, we can develop guys at USM, like my coaching staff and the guys we have in the room. If they're really putting in the effort, they're going to get better. So what I also look for is maybe kids are burnt out. Maybe they had the best high school career you can imagine.
Yeah, maybe they hit their pinnacle in high school.
Exactly. Maybe they peaked, or maybe they just don't want to do it anymore. Because at the end of the day, when you get to college, you have so many more options of things you can be doing. You have so many things pulling you in every direction. If you don't have a strong focus on, hey, what I want to be doing in the classroom and on the wrestling mat, it's going to be difficult to have a really successful career. But I also look at, grades is super important. We're looking at student athletes, like, hey, what kind of student are they?
Keep your grades up.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately we want guys who have good grades and do well in the classroom and are focused on being a good student. With that said too, like, I tell everybody, like, if you're a good student in high school, that's good grades is going to get you your money for college. It's not going to be athletic scholarships because those are so few and far between, and it's so super competitive, especially in wrestling. There's just not that many out there. Whereas like right now, I can tell you when I recruit guys, if they have over a certain GPA, I know they're going to qualify for like a merit scholarship. And that helps out in our recruiting aspect a lot, where I can say, hey, you qualified for this merit scholarship that's based on their academics. That's going to help us out in the recruiting battle when we can offer them that type of stuff.
Right. A lower tuition because
Absolutely.
they were,
So for all you young people out there thinking about wrestling,
keep your grades up.
Keep your grades up.
Any athletes, it's focus on your grades. You see all these studies of like the number of athletes who go from like being a high school athlete to college. It's really small in any sport, right? So it's like a super small number, like maybe like 3% go from high school to college. And then from those that are in college who are actually on athletic scholarship, that's super small. I don't think people have a realistic view on how that works.
So true.
And if they're getting scholarships, it's, maybe a little bit, it's not like a full boat, they
exactly. Maybe it's a 20% or whatever. Whereas if you have good grades, you can really, that's where you get paid to have good grades is at the college level. So.
Right. Yep. Those are really good tips.
Any proudest accomplishments as a head coach, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, the few that stick out to me is as a team, our first year, we actually struggled. My first year as a head coach, we struggled, but we brought in some pretty good recruiting classes. And year 2 and year 3 for us, we were ranked top 25 in the country, which is great. That was like a huge jump for us as a program.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We had our program's first NCAA national champion my second year as a head coach, which is really cool.
So he actually won. He was number 1.
Yeah, he won a national title, NCAA national title, which is...
That must have been pretty exciting.
That was really cool. I mean, that's huge for the program, and that was just huge for him.
And huge for you as the coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's some coaches go their whole career without coaching a national champ. So that was huge. And I kind of feel spoiled to have one in year 2, and this past year we had a wrestler take 3rd in the country, which is great.
Wow.
And then some of this other stuff that I'm really proud of is like the academic stuff. Like we've had a Scholar All-American every year for the last 10 years at USM. Our team GPA this year was a 3.044. That stuff's pretty cool to me because you want to have a good wrestling team, but to be a good program, you need to have guys doing well academically. And ultimately, our number one goal for all our guys is to graduate. So that's like the number one goal over anything else.
Right. Because most people aren't going to be taking this beyond college.
Right. Also, that's the great thing about wrestling or any sport at a D2 or D3 school is that academics is still the main focus.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that's so great that you value that too, because it's like you're looking out for their future in some ways beyond the wrestling.
Beyond the mat.
On the mat.
Absolutely. Division III, Division II, they're really great divisions in the sense that it's more about the balance. It's about the student athlete and it's about the balance. They're students, they're athletes, they have other things going on in their lives. Whereas Division I is great too, but a lot of that focus is just on winning. And it's
absolutely.
It is what it is. But I really like the Division III philosophy and kind of what we try to do and what we represent.
It just seems like a healthier balance.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But like you said, it depends on the person and
it's an individual thing, right? Yep.
So just for anybody out there, Mike, that has aspirations to become a head coach of a wrestling program at the NCAA level, can you tell what it takes to become a head wrestling coach? What are some of the advantages and drawbacks and what a typical day is like for you on the job? And is there any particular training or education you would recommend to get the job?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for whether it's wrestling or any other sport is that you've probably done the sport, right? So like have some knowledge of the sport. So, having competed at a college level, if you want to be a college coach, I probably suggest, and I'm not saying everyone has to, but 9 times out of 10, when you see college coaches, they've competed at the college level in, whatever given sport it is. I think that's important just to have an understanding of what really is going on and what these guys are going through.
Yeah.
That being said, most coaching positions, bachelor's degree is required at the college level. You're going to need a bachelor's degree. Master's degree is preferred, right? In all the job postings that you'll see, a lot of them will want you to have a master's degree. And that being said, you don't necessarily need to have in any particular area. I have my degree in business, which I think
it's probably helped
it actually helps me a little bit in some aspects because just there's so many different things you can do that's involved with any program. So
you said a little bit earlier in the podcast that it's like running a business.
Exactly.
In some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just one of those things that there's a lot to it. Part of the job is fundraising and alumni engagement, things like that. And I think having that degree kind of helps in those areas. But, a lot of it's just they want to see that you have a degree, preferably a master's degree. And then obviously just a really in-depth knowledge of whatever sport you're trying to coach is really big. If you really are serious about coaching, is being okay with, starting out and kind of just working your way up. I started out as a volunteer assistant and I didn't know what I was expecting ultimately, but doors opened up for me and I just kind of stayed the course, and I was just happy to still be involved in wrestling. Like, I didn't know if I'd ever be a head coach or where it would take me, but just by staying involved, some opportunities happened and it's kind of led to where I'm at right now.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you said at the beginning of the podcast. You just basically followed your passion and now you're getting paid for it, which is so cool.
Yeah.
I do think if you wake up every day and you're doing something you really care about, success is going to happen.
Right. And people just notice it and they want you involved when they see that. So what's a day like, Mike?
Yeah, what's
so
a typical day like? Like, what time do you have to be at work and what's on your schedule for the day?
Well, I think that just really depends too, like what time of year it is. So like in the season, we're going to be getting the guys ready, whether it's different workouts or actual practices. And then, a lot of times on the weekends, we're traveling and competing. We will host sometimes, but, competitions on the weekends. We'll do practices during the week. And then on top of that, there's a lot of different paperwork that's involved. The stuff that no one sees is like the meetings that I'll have with maybe my administration or with certain student athletes on whatever the case may be.
Right.
Doing all the paperwork that's necessary. There's tons of paperwork that comes along with coaching, which is one of the things that I,
that's a drawback.
But yeah, that's maybe one of the drawbacks. But
Right.
And then,
nobody likes paperwork.
Yeah, like everyone. I love practices. Like those are the best. But there's a lot of other things that go. Catching up with recruits. Recruiting is a year-long thing. So like that's something that we'll try to do regardless of what time of year it is. We'll be recruiting student athletes, and then depending the time of year, like summertime's a lot more laid back. Outside of season is, for me at least, it's more laid back in the sense that I guess I'm doing stuff with coaching, but it's not as much the hands-on like when we are in season, like October to March, mid-October to mid-March. We are very hands-on. We're training, we're traveling, we're competing, we're making sure our guys are feeling good, making sure that all that's happening. And then outside of season, where it's a Division III program, we actually don't have our hands on our guys like physically. Like I don't have like set practices. If I'm in my office, our guys will come and they'll hang out and talk. We'll, see how things are going. Again, recruiting is always happening. Organizing different maybe fundraisers for the program, doing things like that, working on our schedule, stuff through alumni. There's a lot of things going on. Just making sure our guys are doing well in all areas, whether it's academically, making sure they're doing well, and, just being there for them a lot of the times if they need anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where are you in your season right now?
So we finished our season last month. We came back from the NCAA tournament. It was about probably like mid-March we got back from the NCAA tournament. So our season concluded then. Right now, our guys are actually finishing up the semester. They're a couple more weeks, and then they'll have finals, and then a lot of them will go home for the summertime. And then once we get back on campus in September, we kind of hit the ground running with stuff until we really get into it. So yeah, it's... Well,
you're basically, when you said October to March, I mean, essentially that's the whole school year.
It really is.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, it really is. They have about a month before the season starts and probably like, maybe
a month
5 or 6 weeks after. But most of the year is we're in season, which is, I like it like that though.
Yeah, I'm sure you do, because that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, listen, Mike, this has been so awesome. I think anybody out there who's interested in becoming a wrestling coach, or even young people that are interested in wrestling or parents of wrestlers, is going to just get so much from listening to you and all you had to share. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing all your knowledge about wrestling.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. I appreciate you having me.
It's been great talking to you, Mike. Thanks so much. It's fun to learn about your career, and I know a lot of people out there will be interested in hearing all about it.
Definitely.
Awesome.
I feel so grateful to be doing these podcasts because everyone has such an interesting story of how they got into their careers, and this one is no exception.
No exception. You're not kidding. Yeah, grateful and inspired. Mike has definitely followed his passion.
Right.
And his hard work has put him in a head coach position at such a young age. I am so impressed with that.
No doubt. Really impressive. I really enjoyed hearing his story from how he started in wrestling to where he is now. It is great that he can still be so involved in the sport that he loves.
My guess is he could still get on the mat and give some of the guys he coaches a run for their money.
Yeah, I think you're probably onto something there.
Yeah.
If anyone out there is hoping to wrestle in college and wants to contact Coach Morin, you will find his information in the show notes. And as a final note, anyone interested in learning more about our business, academic and career advising services, we invite you to visit our website, and we will include that link in the show notes. We assist people with changing careers, possibly finding that first job out of college, the college admissions process, selecting an academic major, deciding on a career, or things of that nature. You can check it all out on our website, Academic and Career Advising Services. We are located in Kennebunk, Maine. However, for your convenience, we also offer video conferencing services. You're never too old to change your career or to go back to college, and you're never too young to begin thinking about your future. We enjoy serving people of all ages.
If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast and would like to help us out, could you please leave a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts?
This really helps others to find our podcast.
We would greatly appreciate it. Also, to get all the latest on upcoming episodes, please follow us on social media. All of those links will be included in the show notes. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks so much for listening.